Streaming? We are. The stream is live. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Christiana Ellis, and we're playing some tabletop role-playing games, kind of. Yay! With me today, we have Nobilis Reed.
Hello, hello.
Mark Kilfoyle.
Hello, hello.
And Lee Burdett.
Hi!
And today, we are playing a game called For the Queen! This is a game... oh, sorry. Was someone had a comment, or...?
Just a huzzah.
Huzzah. This is a game that I heard about on the One Shot podcast, which is a great podcast, if anybody is not already aware of it. It is a podcast where they play all different games. Each episode, frequently they do a one shot, and then each game session that would probably be several hours is broken up into a couple of episodes. And so what you'll see is each game gets like a part 1, 2, 3. But then they move on to another game, and they play lots of different games, and it's great. So you should check that out. But when I heard their session for the Queen, that just seemed like a really fun game to me, and so I thought we would check it out. And the basic concept of this game, the premise all gets explained as we do the rules, but the basic idea of it is literally just that we choose a queen just based on there are a number of different images of queens, and we pick one. And then everything else in the game is literally just we draw these prompt cards that have questions on them, and then we answer it. And so we build this world by taking turns answering questions about it. And so it is certainly a way of doing world building that can be very effective, but the questions are very good too. And it was all very evocative when I heard it, and I was excited to play it. And so I'm very grateful that you guys were willing and available to play it with me today.
Well, it sounded like fun, at least to me, so.
Huzzah.
Huzzah.
Yes.
And so the way, let's see, I'm just trying to think. I'm trying to get this screen set in I think this is probably the best way. So the part of the game actually includes going through and reading the instructions. There's 3 decks. There's the red deck with prompt cards, the blue deck with queens, and then the green deck is instructions. And so the way we start is by taking turns reading the instructions cards. Now, a couple of them are modified slightly for Roll20. So, in particular, Roll20, I'm just pulling up the Roll20 mods. So, for example, instruction card number 7 gets ignored because it's addressed in a different way. And there's other sorts of, the way that you pick the queen card is a little different because, of course, just the Roll20 mechanics of it. But otherwise, we're going to if you all look in your journal, do you all have the instruction cards listed there? If not,
yes.
You do or no?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
So what we're going to do is just kind of go in sequence, each reading the cards there. The other way that you can do it is if you go to the green deck and hover over it and pick choose, it'll pull up a little window that has all of them listed, and then you can click each one to make it bigger. And so I'll start, but let's just as an arbitrary way, let's just go left to right on our so me, Nobilis, Mark, Lee, and so on.
Okay.
Okay. Huzzah.
Huzzah! So go around the table clockwise, taking turns reading these cards aloud.
The land you live in has been at war for as long as any of you have been alive.
The Queen has decided to undertake a long and perilous journey to broker an alliance with a distant power.
The Queen has chosen all of you and no one else to be her retinue and accompany her on this journey.
I'm pulling up each of these cards as we read them. She chose you because she knows that you love her.
Oh. Lovely.
You are welcome to look through the Queen cards for inspiration. If there is one that seems right for the group, place it on the table to inspire your story. Is that to me then?
No, we'll do that at the end.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Let's just read them all first.
All right. Set the card that reads, "The Queen is under attack. Do you defend her?" aside.
Yeah, so we're going to do that slightly differently because of Roll20.
Do that differently because of Roll20.
Shuffle the red prompt cards and place them face down in the center of the table.
All right. Put the Queen is under attack card in the middle of the deck for a game that takes approximately 30 minutes, or shuffle it into the bottom third of the deck to play for an hour or more. And I'll just add as an editorial note here that I think how long the game takes is highly dependent on how elaborate your various RP answers to these questions are. So, so it could very well go longer than that if we are feeling loquacious.
When you have read the instruction cards, continue clockwise with the red prompt cards. Take turns reading the questions out loud. Interpret these questions and answer them however you wish.
Other players may ask you questions or make suggestions on your turn, but whether you answer those questions or include those suggestions is entirely up to you.
Oops.
Play.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I clicked the wrong one to have on the screen while you were reading.
Okay. Are we ready now?
Yes.
Okay. Place the X card somewhere everyone can easily reach it.
So, note the X, the big X we've got on the screen here. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So playing the X card in Roll20, basically, you can either say X or you can do your little ping on it. Oh, and then it's my turn to read next. If you encounter a card or an answer that you don't want to be included in the game, tap the X card, and that content is removed from the game.
If you draw a card that is removed this way, simply draw another card. You can X a card that you drew yourself.
You can also pass on your turn. To do so, give the prompt card you drew to the next player and say, "I'd like to hear your answer to this question."
A prompt card can be passed around the table until someone applies the X card to it.
Continue answering, passing, and Xing questions until the Queen is under attack card is drawn.
Each player should answer that question in turn. Then the game is over.
Whoever wants to can draw the first prompt card.
All right. So those are the instructions. So what we do, you know, we're essentially going to follow those instructions. But as far as picking a queen, we have a couple of choices, just in the sense that the Roll20, if everyone hovers over it and clicks choose, you can just look at all of the choices. And so we can, as a group, pick one, or we could draw one at random, or however you guys want to do it.
Okay. I only see the option to draw a queen. Not
Oh, really?
choose.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. It lets me choose what I'm also created the game session, so it's...
yeah. So how about if we each draw one, put them on the table, and then pick from what we get?
Yeah, okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so... deal... Oops. Yeah, so I think if we each... Let's see.
Because right now they're in your hands. And then
Yeah.
if you click and drag them, you can put them on the table.
Right.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
What's yours, Mark?
Good question. Let's see if this is...
So I'm going to move them a little bit just to appear correctly on my window, which will, be what the stream shows.
Okay, well, I have to say that I don't like the white I drew, and I am okay. I don't like playing horror games, so the two on the right kind of immediately turn me off.
Well,
the other two are fun.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, the deck contains a pretty wide variety of sort of flavors of Queen, so to speak. And so, yeah, if we want to just go ahead and say let's not do the two on the right, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Unless anyone really was just determined, in which case we could talk about it. But I think in the spirit of the X card, which we just read about, if anyone is just saying I don't want to do that one, let's not do it.
Yeah.
So between these two, anyone have like a preference or a feeling about it?
I can go either way with them.
I kind of like the first one better myself, but I can do either one.
Okay.
There's a sense of ferocity and violence in that second one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Well, and again, like, this is just going to start inspiring us to build the story of like, who is this queen? What is she like? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll vote for the first one too.
Okay. Well, that's
One.
fine with me. So I would say that's the decision made then. This is our queen. Doo-doo.
hello, Queenie.
So I think then just navigate. Whoops, I'm trying to get the window to be zoomed properly. And then so I've got two different scroll bars that are kind of on top of each other right now. Why is that happening? Hang on, my... Oops.
Technical difficulties. Take a drink.
Well, no. Yeah, my...
Ladies and gentlemen, D&D Beyond. No, never mind. That's the wrong place.
Roll20 is a fine tool for all of your interactions, rolling 20 and cards and things.
Well, the just the three decks right now are scrolled in such a way that like I can't like.
Well, the only one we need anymore is the prompts deck, right?
Right,
the red one.
but as it is right now, even with the sort of that deck, scroll bar, all the way up, it's like the top of it is off the top of my screen.
Ha!
Oh, you could probably zoom in or out if you need to.
Well, but it's not scrolling with the. It's not zooming with the.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't.
Oh.
Yeah, that's weird.
No.
I don't know. I don't know how to fix that other than like logging out and logging back in because it wasn't like that to begin with. Weird. Why is it doing that?
Yeah,
wait.
I don't see any way to move it.
Is there a way to put it in the journal or?
Well, the
more
journal has the
functional?
instructions only.
Oh, okay.
Okay, hang on. Here's what that works. I can hide the instruction and queen cards. That
Okay.
Yeah, so you can do that too, since we only need the prompt ones now. So if you guys want to, you can just hide the.
It did it for all of us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that works then. Okay, so first, what I need to do is we need to decide: are we playing a shorter game or a longer game? Because that's as we read in the instructions, we put the Queen is under attack card either higher or lower in the deck, depending on how long we want the game to run.
I just want to interject here a little bit. Welcome to Other Doc in the chat, who actually had your suggestion like probably 10 seconds before you did it. So someone who's played the game before will be able to give us some instruction along the way, perhaps.
Very nice. So let's.
Anyways, I am fairly conservative when this comes to this kind of stuff, so I'd say a shorter game at first.
Okay.
And then if we like it, and if we think, oh, that was way too short, then next time we can play a longer game.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm shuffling the way Roll20, and it specifically instructs this in the Roll20 specific instructions. The way we do this is that I have to shuffle it, and then I look at it to say I can see where in the stack that card is, and I have to just kind of keep doing it randomly until it's at a place that I want it to be.
Okay.
And it keeps putting it high in the deck, so let me keep...
Well, high in the deck would mean a shorter game. So
well, but I'm talking about
like
the sixth card, for example.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That's a little too short.
Right.
Correction, Other Doc has not yet played the game, but has watched
that one
several
was...
streams.
Yeah, that one was... Okay.
I hope one of the questions is, what are people in your stream chat talking about right now?
So I'm definitely observing the mechanics of the shuffle mechanism working, though. Okay, so this one has it about halfway through. So let's go ahead and just play that one, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
All right. So, does anyone want to go first?
1, 2, 3, nodded.
1, 2, 3, nodded.
I will go first.
Okay. So, go ahead and just draw the card and put it up on the screen in the little prompts field, and
you sometimes think you might be the Queen's favorite. Why? And why does this worry you? I am the pilot of the Queen's airship that we're taking. No, the captain, actually, of the airship that we're taking on our cruise. And the magic that keeps it running is tied directly to my own heart. There's a mystic gem implanted in my body that powers the magic that runs it. It's directly off of my life force. And if we ever were to give in to our feelings, it would sever my connection with the airship. And since it is the last in the realm, it would be a tremendous risk to the country if this ever happened.
Is it the last in the realm, or just the last that belongs to our kingdom or queendom?
It's the last in the world.
Ooh. Very nice.
They used to exist all over the world, but one by one their captains succumbed to one passion or another, and they and their ships were destroyed.
How is a captain selected? Like, how did you get this? Is it passed on from one to another?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't have a quick answer for that.
That's fine.
It might
anybody
else want to
emerge.
suggest an answer?
How about you don't know because the people who designed it and who designed the system are now all dead. So you have no idea what the qualifications would be.
Yeah, all
to
I know
select
is
a successor.
all I know is how I got it, and I just woke up with it one day.
Interesting.
You were selected.
Yes.
Unknown reasons. So is it a problem that if you are the Queen's favorite, you would either be expected or would find yourself internally expecting to respond in kind, thus the emotional rise? Is it that you're worried that you would have to respond and therefore end the ship, or would accidentally respond?
I already have inclinations in that direction, and the only thing that prevents me from falling into it is that it's unrequited. But
wow. Wow.
Yeah, that does seem like a legitimate thing to worry about. Is that you have these completely incompatible competing drives to be an asset to the queendom, but also in love.
yes.
Very nice. Okay.
Well, way to set the bar pretty high. how do we determine when a turn is done? I forget.
Well, it's whenever we decide that it is, and that's why I was saying that this game can expand or contract depending on how much we elaborate.
I think we could use a signal to say, I have no more questions or suggestions of some kind, and then
I am satisfied with your answer, sir.
I think just a group consensus is fine. I think it'll feel right most of the time.
I'm afraid of saying more. It'll be really hard to follow.
So, all of our expanding, clarifying questions and everything are completely optional. That's only we do it if we're interested. So,
yeah.
All right. So if we're ready to move on, let's go ahead and draw a card, Mark.
Don't know if I'm ready to move. Let's see here. All right. Let's see what my card says here. Bloom. What makes the Queen beautiful in your eyes? Good Lord. Let us see. The Queen is unestimably beautiful in physical form. That is known widely. But there are many such who share such a beauty. The Queen speaks many languages and is fluent in negotiation and all sorts of manner of state. But there are many other pages and knights and squires and people, senators and things who can take up that. No, the true thing which sets this queen aside from all others of the land and all queens before her and perhaps even all queens after her is her sensitivity and her willingness to follow her heart.
Does everyone agree with you on that, or are there those who find that a weakness?
There are definitely those who find it a weakness, but suppressions are manageable by those loyal to the Queen.
All right. You want to? I think that one sounds right. So if we are ready. Go ahead and
Good.
move on.
Yeah. Both hard acts to follow.
Oh, well, no pressure on it. We're going to be going around several times, so.
All right. Let's see if I can get it up here. What do you do that pleases the Queen on this journey? I want to say something ridiculous like not sing.
That's fine if that's where your heart is taking you.
Stop producing the captain. He definitely doesn't need it.
I guess as one of the serving women that she has to take along whenever she goes anywhere. The best thing that I can do to please her is to be as unobtrusive as possible and as helpful as possible.
You say that she has to take serving. Mm-hmm. What is it about her that makes her so dependent?
It's not that she's dependent, it's that it's a sign of status.
Okay, so it's a social requirement, not a physical one.
Yes.
So what you excel at, your sort of responsibility in terms of keeping her happy, is that she must remain above, so to speak, and that you make it easy for her to do that so she can do what she needs to do without worrying that something is going to lower her in someone's eyes. Right.
I'm the one who checks for poison. I'm the one who makes sure that all of her dresses are cleaned and unsabotaged. I'm the one who kicks the minstrels out of her bedroom chambers.
The queen would like to go to bed now, but she doesn't want to have to be the one to tell you guys to go away, so I do it. That sort of thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Does the queen have to tell you what to do, or do you just assume you know what's best?
I've been serving long enough that it is an unspoken rule.
If you were to take it into your head that you wanted to manipulate the queen in some way and kind of push her in one direction or another, and were to like admit this minstrel at this time and push another person out at another time and stuff like that, how much influence could you bring to bear if you chose to?
If I chose to, a pretty fair amount, but she knows her own mind. We've
already established that she follows her heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But she knows her own mind, and probably the most I could say is, probably not a good idea, and just make sure that the not good ideas aren't around to distract.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So how changeable is she? Is she stubborn, or is she more prone to, like, she loves someone one moment and the next she wants them to leave?
General shelf life is maybe 6 weeks.
That's not too bad.
Are you alone or at the top of a hierarchy serving this function?
I'm at the top of the hierarchy serving the queen, but I'm alone in serving this particular function.
Right, because one of the established is we are the only people in her retinue.
Yes. Yeah, so it is just us on this airship.
Yeah.
And just us prevails.
Well, we hope.
So long as just us aren't blind.
Because I believe that one of them that was specifically, this is a perilous journey, I think.
Yes.
A long and perilous journey to broker an alliance. All right.
Probably longer than 6 weeks.
Yeah. But she knows we love her, so.
Yes.
All right. All right. Everyone ready?
Your turn.
And with the distraction of the captain, of course.
All right. So I feel like I have different options than you. Okay. Here we go. What did you bring with you to protect the queen? Aha. Well, gosh, I had not really even still solidified my role yet, but protect the queen makes me think I'm kind of like security detail. You know, if Lee's character is, you know, like checks for poisons, checks for any other sort of, but perhaps I am the bodyguard. You know, the actual fighter, and so bringing in this setting, I think I have brought not a full arsenal, but certainly I have brought out a
well-stocked weapon locker.
Well, there's that. I think that is...
Or 9.
I don't know that it necessarily needs to be well-stocked per se, because I don't know that necessarily there's any expectation that any of you would be fighting if it came to it, right? And so if it's really just what I need, I think what I have brought is it's a ceremonial artifact of a weapon, in the sense that when I say ceremonial, I don't mean that it is only ornamental, but that it is not merely a physical object of a weapon. It is something that, in some similar ways to this connection to the airship, it is a weapon that has been bound to a single purpose, which is to say that it must be used to defend the queen. And it has this ability that it has been reinforced by these oaths and ceremonies that have been performed over it, so that it excels in this task. It is light in my hand. It is sharper than any physical object could be, but all of these enhancements are bound up in the use of it for that purpose. And were it to ever be used in a way that is incompatible with that goal, it would disintegrate.
What form does it take?
I feel like it's a...
It sounds like a blade of some kind so far.
Yeah. I think it is a blade. It's a long sword, but it also has I think it has magical properties of kind of like a blinding radiance that it can give out.
What happens to the weapon if you fall in battle? Will it continue to fight, or does it need, or will it move your body so that it can continue to fight even if you fall?
Yeah, I think that it wouldn't literally, like, if I were to fall, it would not be able to manipulate my dead body. But it does have its own sort of will to it. I think what would happen is that my soul has been tied up in the connection to this weapon. And so essentially, if I were to fall, presumably in honorable combat according to its, intended purpose, my soul would be given, drawn into the blade and give it a magical influence to try to determine who should wield it next.
And make it that much more powerful when the next person picks it up in defense of the queen.
Yes.
Are you the first wielder of this weapon?
No. I think that I have wielded it for some time, perhaps a period of like 6 or 7 years, but it was definitely my mentor, whom I trained under for this purpose, who was felled in a battle protecting the queen.
Have you trained anyone else to come after you if you should fall?
I have people who have been training under me, but this retinue, this particular journey needed to be such, traveling light, such a small and tight unit that although I have trained people, those people are not here.
If someone untrained picked up the sword, would the sword be able to continue to fight even without them being trained?
I think that it's a pairing. So if the person who picked it up was, pure of motive and able to fulfill its mission, it would still be a powerful weapon in their hands. But without the martial skill, it would still be a reduced effect.
Okay.
Okay, I'm satisfied.
Yep.
What do you do for the Queen that no one else can do? Well, we've already established that I captain her airship, and that no one else can do it, and that in fact there are no other airships that. So that's already. But I want to add kind of more to that. That would be like too facile. That's too easy to just recapitulate the previous card. Directing the airship is not something like that requires me to actually be on a bridge and manipulating levers and stuff like that. It's just, it's almost unconscious. Just being there and will it to go to a particular place, and that's the direction it goes.
What does it mean for the Queen to have access to the only remaining airship in the world?
Well, it certainly gives her the opportunity to go on this mission with some sense that we can get there safely, because you can avoid a great number of dangers in the air that you otherwise wouldn't have. But it's also a little more difficult to do it stealthily because you're right up in the air and everybody can see you. So who knows who we might have chasing us on the ground. So this is not the first such mission we've gone on. We've traveled a great deal in the defense of her realm. And so what the airship represents is kind of the appearance of the airship over a siege or a battle. Bringing the Queen in is a tremendous morale booster for the troops on the ground when she comes to rally them or to bring messages or information or officers or what have you to a given location.
What if the unique quality you have with respect to the ship and her own compulsions towards love put you in a unique position where you're one of the few people who can answer her absolutely straight, and she knows it? Because you have to suppress any feelings of love, even though you might have them. You have to make sure that you're guided by your mind, and therefore she knows that you can be trusted above almost everyone.
I'm not sure I follow.
He has to maintain an independent position. He cannot allow his emotions to sway with the words he has. So with this discipline of guarding his heart, she knows that he will give her a true answer.
Yeah, that I'm not going to be overly protective, or of her, or take undue risks on myself. I don't know if I can make that connection. Because I mean, I think if that kind of reduces the worrying part from the first place.
Well, you would always be on guard and constantly worrying that you'll fail in both of these positions.
Well, it could also be that she believes something that isn't entirely true. Like, what if she thinks that the fact that you must keep emotions in check means that you would never lie to her? But know that that's not necessarily true.
Right. That what she believes. Well, that's not what the card asks. But let's warp it a little bit and say that what the queen, what the queen thinks that she can get from me and no one else is complete honesty. But that's not actually true. That is an interesting.
So it's not that you are deliberately lying to her, but you know that you could, whereas she assumes that you could not.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I think at this point, I don't know if there's a card for this kind of thing, but I think my character needs a name.
Yeah, well, we can all,
so I'm going to...
Go ahead.
My name is Captain Andreas.
Captain Andreas. Do we all want to pick names? I mean, we can have it emerge as we feel it fits, perhaps.
Okay.
I haven't quite figured that out yet.
All right. I was thinking that my character did once have her own name, but when becoming the official, taking this position, she becomes the Queen's Sword. And that is her role, it's her title. She has forsaken her name that she had before when she took this position.
I'm glad you didn't pick the Queen's Blade.
What are we at?
Yeah,
your turn.
Oh dear. All right. I was afraid of that. Let's see. Draw a card.
It is a truism of these sorts of games. If you have to ask whose turn it is.
It's probably fair enough. What is something you do for the royal family that has prepared you well for this journey? Oh my. Let's see. The royal family must maintain a public vision of unity and of charitability and of fairness, and thus cannot be seen or known or assumed to be doing certain things. Those things are some of the things that I've managed to take care of over time. There's a few people that have raised their voices against the royalty, and they met with an accident, or were suddenly wealthy beyond compare and moved to the countryside. Others who have found themselves with business prospects they had not expected to have and made much money for the royalty. Those are the things that have prepared me well to guard my queen.
How much does the Queen know about these sorts of dealings?
Many of these things are beneath her notice, intentionally so. She's suspected a few times, but I've managed to make others much more suspicious than myself.
I think she probably has more suspicions than you may realize. And that is an
intelligent creature.
Yes, that's why, and that would be why that you were chosen to go on this journey, because.
So there's kind of because there's an element of you want the queen to be seen as above the sort of dirty work that might need to happen. So she needs that sort of plausible deniability, but there might also be a little bit of you decide proactively that she needs plausible deniability, and that's why you don't tell her.
I may have also had certain hands in my being here, out of necessity, of course. I'm sure they'll recover in time from their injuries.
Do you have a name?
Not as yet.
Okay.
Or, in some circles, many names.
Sure. All right, great.
All right. It's asking me how many cards I want to draw every time.
Well, yeah.
Pick one.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it moving. All right. There's someone else in this retinue you love beside the queen. How and why are you keeping it a secret? I'm going to pass this to the sword.
Ooh. Interesting. Okay. Let's see. Oh, hang on. I'm getting a... Oh, all right. Sorry, I got a message that briefly took me out of this amazing world we're creating. So, someone else in this retinue that you love. Gosh. I think that... So, Lee, have you given your character a name?
Not as such.
Okay.
Not yet. I've been thinking about it, but yeah. Let's go with Adriel.
Adriel. Okay. I think that sorry, my phone is bleeping at me. The Queen's sword first started to, was very aware of Adriel because, of course, there's overlap between their roles, and just recognizing that someone else whose life was pretty much dictated by, keeping the queen safe and able to be what she is. And so it started just with a mutual appreciation that they're each serving in, compatible ways. But there were little kindnesses, little grace notes that, don't always have to be there. Just this appreciation of, like, occasionally just recognizing, oh, just the right accessory, or just this little bit of garnish on that meal, and then all these little things that you're doing extra that started to catch the Queen's sword's eye, of that there's extra thought being given of your own expression of, creativity, finding ways to bring your own personality to how you are supporting the queen. And that started to, draw more interest, and eventually realizing how much of what the queen is actually Adriel. And that has started to make the Queen's sword feel like everything in her life was devoted to serving the Queen, but how much of that is actually the Queen as a person, and how much is actually Adriel's creation of how the queen acts and dresses and appears and all of these things. And so she is keeping it a secret because that's not at all what her oath is supposed to be all about. But I think she keeps it, how she keeps it a secret is that she is just very taciturn and perhaps, doesn't talk to Adriel. Just kind of very sort of monosyllabic responses and that sort of thing. And it's just, yeah. So certainly responds to, suggestions and answers questions, but in a very sort of brusque, taciturn way.
Is it a secret from Adriel?
I think that the Queen's Sword intends for it to be, but how successful that is
a secret.
Well, I'm just saying that I think whether Adriel notices or not, it would be up to Adriel.
Mm-hmm. And that is the secret.
All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, that was Lee's card that was passed to Christiana.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that I've got the next one, or Christiana?
Well, I think that we can kind of play it by ear. I mean, I could draw another card, but I just answered one. So I think it makes sense for Nobilis to draw the next one.
Okay. When did you know you would never forgive the Queen, and why? Holy Toledo.
Yeah. See what I mean about this game?
You can always pass.
Mm-hmm.
Or X.
Yeah.
Or X.
Okay. Now give me a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Because emotions are complicated things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't think of anything really appropriate right away, so I'm going to exit.
Okay. So go ahead and, well, I guess it can stay on this pile. But, so you're Xing it as opposed to passing it on.
Right.
Okay,
right.
fair. All right, so the rules aren't obvious about, like, you could draw another one if you want. If you X that one, I think that's okay.
Okay, I'll draw one more and see what happens.
Yeah, choosing to X one shouldn't mean that you skip your turn, I don't think. Because any of us could also X someone else's card, for example.
Okay, when did you know you were in love with the Queen?
The next says, let me go back to something easy.
Yeah, I think, like, if you want, like, because yours have kind of been on a theme so far.
Yeah, and in fact, the reason, and for that reason, I'm actually going to pass this one to Mark.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And when we pass, it doesn't necessarily just have to be to the next person. It could be to anyone you think it would be interesting.
Well, no.
But yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah, we've already got the Adriel Queen's Sword thing going on, so I just wanted to entangle Mark's character.
Sure.
Well, it was probably when she was but a child, showing such promise in all of her classes, but a tendency to be distracted. I could see the potential, the future leadership of our very wonderful country, and made it my mission at that point to make sure that she reaches her absolute fruition.
How old were you at this time?
Oh, as old as the Queen is now. She is still young, and I was young, perhaps somewhat foolish, though I would never admit it to most company. I was one of her instructors at the time, well, tutoring her in business and finance and dealing with others in complicated matters. There were some other students, some other children of foreign nobles in the class. I made sure that the most distracting of them didn't succeed.
Mm.
At that point, I knew I had a higher mission in life. Her.
Is this something that could ever happen? Or is it something you are resigned to, knowing this will be forever an impossible thing, but you feel it nonetheless?
I believe it is something that must never happen. Were she to reciprocate, and I to take on any official capacity within the kingdom, it would not end well.
Are we talking not end well as in screaming fights and throwing the china at each other, or not end well as in massive revolution, civil war, everything goes kaboom?
More than
on a sliding scale between 1 and 10.
If I were to be committed to her in that way, then I would feel obligated to inform her about the things that I have been hiding from her entire life. And that would destroy the beauty that I love so much. Also, there would likely be revolutions and a lot of burning.
So, is there... I feel like I'm asking, but I feel like I detect a little bit of there's a little bit of a self-hating flavor to that, of like, I love her, but if I ever tried to do anything, I would ruin it. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting. All right.
Am I sufficiently entangled, Nubilis?
Oh yeah. That's nice and juicy.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I think it's Lee's turn now.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm in the process. All right. The Queen thinks more highly of you than you do of yourself. How do you know this? I want to say because she does ask for my opinion, and she does listen to me on occasion when she needs to talk things out and needs a devil's advocate. That she does listen to me, that I'm a person of value to her, even though, I was born so much lower than her.
So your whole focus, your whole role is that she's supposed to be above these things. And so perhaps when she has very human insecurities and needs of actually wanting your opinion, or maybe even real sincere reassurance, as opposed to, of course, whatever the Queen thinks, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe you almost feel like she should not be consulting you because she's supposed to know everything. Is that what you're thinking, or
no? It's more like she has the education. Mm-hmm. She has the knowledge and the experience. She's already been working pretty much from a small child. She's always been at her father's knee when he was ruling the kingdom. Or maybe if we're making this a queendom, maybe it was her mother's knee. She was always there when the great decisions were made. And, I may be doing my part to protect her, maybe be doing my part to help her present herself.
Well, it sounds to me like from earlier descriptions, one of the services that you might be providing to her that she values greatly, that you perhaps don't see the value in yourself, is that you help her decide who to trust.
Yeah, I can see that.
Right? And that she, you know, learning is great, but if you know, a lot of information comes via other people, and they always have like an
agenda.
An agenda, even if they aren't aware of it, they have an agenda, and that you may not have, you know, the book learning, but you know, your job, part of your job, you are going to be make problems for her away, and as such, you've got a head for character, and that she values that a great deal, and you perhaps don't see that it's quite as valuable as she does. How's that?
Yeah, I think so.
So here's a question, though. Your job is so important, right? And she clearly trusts you in this role and thinks, presumably, that you're doing a great job. But if you don't think as highly of yourself, is that stressful for you? What is your day-to-day experience like? Do you feel like you're doing a good job, or do you feel
I
like
have
you're
a regularly
in some way?
I have a regularly scheduled panic attack for half an hour before I go serve her morning tea.
It's right there on the clipboard.
You know, you have to. I am a very busy person. I have to make sure that I have everything. Everything has its time, and if I don't have time for that panic attack, well, I'll just save it until tomorrow.
Fun. Oops, I have to. Okay. So let's see. The Queen knows something about you that no one else does. What is it? My first thought was it was like my former name, but that doesn't really make sense. If I have only taken this role recently, like, wouldn't there have been other, like, if I was one of the trainees, like, I don't, and I'm not sure that's as interesting anyway. I think she knows, and now so she and I are now the only ones that know that my life. So in addition to the sword, like, if it were to ever be used in a way that violates its intended use, it would disintegrate, but that I would also die. And that is knowledge that is only passed on to the Queen's Sword during that official sort of transition ceremony. Like, the trainees don't know that's what they're signing up for.
So is the passing on ceremony something that is just like the new sword, the old sword, and the Queen?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
where does that happen?
I think that it could happen, and like, if it's being handled as like a formal official ceremonial retirement for a Queen's Sword that has served well and is now just reached an age where they feel like it must be passed on for the good of the Queen, that would happen. Not in it would happen. I'm just trying to think. I think that there is a special chamber within the palace that is, it's not the throne room, it's not any kind of a public area, but it is a special ritual chamber where the ceremonies that sanctify the sword are performed. And it's essentially like a little chapel, but it's sort of just for this purpose. The purpose not only of this transition ceremony, but the ritualistic ceremonies that sanctify the sword happen there, and that's also where this would happen. But that's not necessarily the only place that it could happen, because if a queen's sword were to fall in battle and it would need to be given to a new person without the possibility of that ceremony, it could happen. Like, that's why the queen has to know that that's how it works, because she would need to be present for the new queen's sword to be receive their gifts.
Does that mean that the queen often fights on the battlefield, or that is often present on the battlefield?
Well, the queen's sword would never be away from the queen.
Right.
So it's not that the queen is necessarily on the battlefield, but that the queen's sword is at her side always. Not, not on the front lines away from the queen, but the one that stays there with her. Like the King's Guard.
So would there be a motto associated with something like betrayal is death?
I feel like that's too negative, because it would be, the motto would be framed as my life for the queen. So, and it certainly something that could be seen by someone from another point of view as almost a little bit sinister, especially the idea that you don't know until this ritual is performed that that's the deal.
Yeah.
But I think that in the context of the ceremony, it's presented like this sort of holy paladin oath type of thing of like, I am swearing to give my life for the queen, whatever that means. And I am so committed to this that is a codicil that I'm willing to accept, because I would never break it.
I'm just imagining one of them is like, wait, hold, what's this clause E?
Always read the fine print.
Yeah. But so that would be an important part of the training of potential new queen swords, is that for the existing queen sword to know they have to choose someone who, is perhaps ready for that. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. I think it's my turn.
Mm-hmm.
The queen trusts you, but no one else in the royal court does.
Wow, and I didn't get that question. That's great.
It's because I'm never there. Everyone else in the court is like, involved in these palace intrigues, and can have their measure of each other, and there's a certain, there's trust where you know that the other person has your best interests at heart and would never do you dirt. And then there's the kind of trust that you have for someone like Littlefinger, where, yeah, you know he's a rat, but you know what kind of rat he is, and can kind of figure out how he's going to jump in a given situation, right? So there's a kind of a different level of trust that happens at that kind of political power player level, and since I'm not operating on that level, the court doesn't really have my measure, and so they kind of are a little aloof, because I'm just not there often enough and long enough to establish the relationships that kind of trust is based on.
maybe it's even more than that. Maybe it's just that you can't be tied down. There's nothing that binds you specifically to this queen. You could get on your airship and go at a moment's notice.
Yeah.
And so they can't trust you to stay if something bad happens, even though she does.
Yeah, I think that that's a really interesting sort of power imbalance, is that almost everyone else is kind of serving at the queen's pleasure, in the sense that we are dependent on the queen accepting our service, or else we lose everything. Whereas the queen does not actually have control over your connection to the airship, and so in theory, you could just defect and take the airship with you anytime you wanted.
Yeah, and I'm, people ask me sometimes, why are you caught up in this hopeless cause? And I just shrug, because speaking the reason would make it too strong.
Well, and you just introduced something too, that you called this a hopeless cause. We knew it was a long and perilous journey. We knew that she had talked to many other.
Well, you wouldn't go on a long and perilous journey for this kind of thing unless things are in bad shape.
Oh.
You wouldn't do it personally.
Yeah.
So
I'm just so, almost regardless of the objective quality of it, the idea that Captain Andreas, I think is what you said.
Andreas, yeah.
At least Captain Andreas thinks it's a hopeless cause, and as the only one who realistically could leave.
Right.
That's interesting.
Does the captain intentionally not go to court?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the ship is quite useful, and because he's the only one who can captain it, it goes along. He goes along with it, and there's always things that need doing with it. But when the ship is at the palace, he doesn't like intentionally stay away. And just because he's not trusted doesn't mean he's not given a certain level of welcome.
Oh, look, here comes the flyboy. Everybody want to put on your good faces again.
Right, but there's also, people recognize the value and don't want to alienate it.
Here's a question. The magic that's associated with your control over the airship, and especially the fact that even you don't know how you got it.
Yeah.
How common is that? Like, that kind of magic.
It used to be all the airships.
Yeah. Well, I just mean, like, that might be already something that's very, like, is that something, that kind of magic, not just for airships, but of any kind? Like,
Well, I mean, it already sounds like, yeah. There already seems like an echo with the Queen's sword. So I think that
it makes you something other than regular human, for sure.
Yeah. I have this idea that the thoughts that Captain Andreas's thoughts and emotions are kind of reflected in the airship itself. So if he gets all like heated, the envelope heats up and it rises and it glows, and if he gets gives someone an icy stare, then it turns to then the gas cools and it sinks.
I have an idea. What if it's an elemental and you are mystically bound to the elemental, and so whichever emotion is linked to that elemental property, that's what determines it. So if you're really chilly to somebody, it invokes the ice element. If you're like somebody, it invokes heat.
And
I'm sorry. Go.
And the element that's associated with wind, which is the most useful element to someone who's got an airship, is intellect, is rationality. So that's why he has to kind of maintain that, because that's the element he wants to be associated with the airship as much as possible.
I like that, but I'm also just suddenly fascinated with this concept. You know, when we talk about emotional control, usually what we do talk about is the idea of suppressing your emotions in order to let rationality and reason prevail. But what about emotional control, where in order to accomplish some things you must feel happy, some things you must feel angry, some things you must feel sad, where emotion control is literally willing yourself to feel different emotions in order to do different things.
Oh yeah, that's definitely on my mind here. Is that he has to be he's not he has to be the master of his emotions, but be able to evoke them when he can, and sometimes that's more difficult than others.
I have an idea about why the ships crash. Because passion is an earthy emotion, and it makes the ship so heavy that it can't maintain its lift, and so it just crashes straight to the earth.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So rather than passion being heat and it explodes.
Right. No, I was thinking that it just kind of floats away, but that's even better. Yeah.
Yeah. Or feeling the connection to another person. It's like you're being drawn to something other than yourself. The ship being drawn to the earth rather than. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Keep your head in the clouds, flyboy.
Right. So he has to kind of maintain a kind of lofty ivory tower separation in order to keep the ship flying.
Cool.
I've got another shade I'd like to put in here.
Okay.
After all, such a unique power and position, especially with respect to the Queen, could be considered somewhat dangerous and threatening. Perhaps one of the reasons you're also not trusted at court is others have perhaps whispered certain dangerous thoughts about isolating the Queen from dangerous people, asking for a friend.
That certainly sounds plausible. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And also explains why Mark's character is on this trip.
I've got my eyes and spies on you.
And see, all of that comes from this one card. So,
this is kind of cool.
Yeah. So definitely, when I heard this game on the podcast, I was just like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. All right.
All right. What evil am I going to drag up? Let's see. What brings out the Queen's cruelty? Carefully directed words on occasion, well-crafted situations, evidence of overwhelming betrayal. Those have been useful.
How does her cruelty manifest?
Often she leaves the exact details to others to direct, but most often it would be isolation, imprisonment, and perhaps if the cruelness is really severe, burning the family line to the ground, I suppose. She's very passionate, after all.
So is this primarily a case of her being unforgiving when wronged, or is it sometimes spontaneous?
I think that there would be a lot of effort to maintain spontaneous reactions as smaller explosions and direct the larger ones to more useful operations.
Well, we did already learn she has the 6-week. People tend to have a 6-week.
I have a calendar set for it.
So do I.
Every 6 weeks, know how to placate the queen. It's written on my thing.
And I think one of the cool things about this game is a lot of the cards have a really good, like the queen cards are great at having an image that can be interpreted in a number of ways, right? Like if we look at her facial expression, is that an innocent facial expression or is that a cruel facial expression? You know,
that looks more bored to me.
Depends if that yellow in the background is someone's home burning down, I suppose.
Yeah, well, but that's kind of the point, though, is context matters.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, let's see what I get. Right. What brings out the queen's kindness?
I like how these two cards landed on the two of us because it definitely.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, and back to back is fun too.
Yes. I want to break out into. These are a few of my favorite things, but I promised I would not sing on this trip. Bad Adriel, no singing.
I think singing, by the way, is something that the Queen's Sword heard Adriel do, and that was part of.
No singing, no singing.
No.
Or was it a singing sword and it was jealous?
It's the sword of friendship. I think what brings out her kindness is just an acknowledgement of how much good there is in people. You know, there are betrayers and backstabbers and all this kind of stuff, but just how many good people there are in her kingdom. The helpful stories of, you know, hey, this farmer's house burned down, but he was able to get out, and now he's living with his neighbors, and they're helping him rehabilitate the farm and all that. And so that just inspires her to give back in the city, where that kind of level of assistance might not be seen, or might not be seen too by the city dwellers themselves, because they're so much closer to court. So that's I think that just kind of inspires her to take a step back and actually, you know, do something for her people that is not just trying to rule well, but trying to do something direct for her people.
Is this maybe an element of she seems to very sincerely and passionately care about whoever she sees as the innocents among her people, and that maybe almost also ties to how she can be cruel when she perceives that someone has done something that goes against that philosophy, but that she is likewise kind and generous when she feels people have lived up to that.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe not. I think where you see it the most is kind of like behind the scenes, the places that help the little kids that might be living on the street try and, you know, bring themselves up so that they can actually, you know, be fruitful, productive parts of society rather than cut purses and cat burglars and things. So it's more her trying to work behind the scenes while also trying to rule well. So, but yeah, I think that does go straight hand in hand with her cruelty.
How often is she kind?
She has a regularly scheduled bout of kindness. Every day after lunch.
Good tea. Bring me a nice person.
No, it's more like I need some catharsis after listening to all of this drivel in my cart for the last 3 hours. You know how that goes.
Oh, do I ever.
All right. Okay. What promise did the queen make to you before this journey? Do you think she'll keep it? Oh, let's, because do you think she'll keep it kind of eliminates the idea, well, I don't know, I mean, because my first thought was the idea, tying into this idea of a hopeless cause, like a promise that it is worth risking herself on this journey because the alliance that she'll make at our destination will save everything. And so my fears that this journey is too dangerous has made me want to advise her not to do it. But she promised me that this alliance would be worth it. And so I've just had to swallow the feeling that I'm allowing her to go into danger because she has promised me that it would be worthwhile. I don't know, but that makes it less about, like, do you think she'll keep it? That's such an important piece of this question. I think that what her promise was as part of making this journey was that she would not put herself in unnecessary harm's way. Like, that she would not risk herself foolishly. And, but I feel like I have sometimes sensed in her, not like a death wish or anything like that, but a recklessness. Like, she trusts me to protect her, but she seems to be she lets that make her foolhardy sometimes. Like, she knows that I'm always there to protect her, but that sometimes means she puts herself in dangerous situations just relying on my ability to protect her, when sometimes she might eventually put herself in too much danger for me to be able to protect her. And that's like my nightmare, is that she will order me to let her do something that will result in me failing to protect her. And so she promised that if the journey ever seemed to be too dangerous, that she would let me make the call to abort it.
Okay.
If I ever feel like this is too dangerous and I can't protect her sufficiently, she would let me say that and we would stop the journey. And but I know that if I say we should turn back and she says no, it's her way it goes. Like, I have no ability to enforce that promise.
So as she was giving this promise to you, you knew it was a lie or unenforceable.
Unenforceable. Yeah. So it was she's making a promise to me, but it's up to her whether or not to keep it. I have no way to make her keep it.
A promise that has that kind of consequences backing it up is a lot less of a promise, if you ask me. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that a promise that actually does give up power is a more meaningful promise.
Did the Queen give the promise spontaneously, or did the sword?
No, I think
ask
what
for
it
prompts?
was. I think what it was is that when this journey was being prepared, and like the small retinue on the airship, whose captain I don't really trust, going on this long, dangerous journey, like I thought that this was too dangerous, and I could not guarantee her safety on my own. I would do everything in my power, but sometimes everything in my power has to be advising her not to do something.
Yeah.
But she promised, in order to assuage my feelings, that, you know, and like I have no ability to actually, like, certainly in terms of systemic power. Like in theory, like I could choose to make a different decision, even if it would mean my death. Like, but so all I have is her word. And so I think that she has promised me that she would let me make the call. But ultimately, I have to just, you know, I have to just trust that she will, you know, I have devoted myself to her, and I have to hope that I can keep that promise of my own.
Up to and including throwing her over your shoulder and walking off?
Well, you know, that's a good point, because I think that at a certain point, it could come to that. And so it's a question of, you know, like, if I felt that, yeah, I think actually that does make sense, is that there is theoretically some latitude for the Queen's sword to disobey the Queen's orders, specifically only in the sense that this magical oath that I have sworn means that if I were ever to act with a motive other than protecting the Queen's safety, it would, you know, would be the end of me. And so there is some latitude for me to disobey her if it's for that reason. And so perhaps that's part of this agreement, is that this idea that maybe she's stringing me along in the sense of just trying to keep me from making that decision of you know, enforcing that we're going to stop this journey. But it's like she is trying to keep me pacified by promising to not take undue risks. But
or so help me, I'll turn this airship around.
Yeah.
We're going home.
Well, and to some extent, you know, I am only one person. And so, you know, she has increasingly put us into a situation where it's not a trivial thing for me to be able to protect her if things start to go very badly wrong. You know, I don't have control over the airship. So if I say it's now too dangerous, we have to turn around, and then she tells the captain not to turn around, you know, my choices become limited.
Right.
Cool.
Okay. My turn, I think.
Yep.
How does the Queen remind you of her status while on the journey? The idea that I need to be reminded in the first place is interesting.
Well, do you need to be reminded? I don't. It doesn't necessarily have to be a case of, does she remind you because you needed to be reminded, or it could just be things that she does that remind you. Well, up to you, though. It's your question.
She doesn't make requests. She only gives orders. It's never, would you please? It's do this thing. She never addresses me as anything except Captain, and does not even hear if I should slip up and use any other title except Your Majesty. It just doesn't even register.
Although you are the Queen's favorite.
Yes. Or at least I think, I worry that I might be.
Yeah.
Right.
You think you might be was the question earlier, yeah?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you're kind of turned on by brusque women, I guess is the...
Well, it's this battle between the way she looks at me and the way she talks to me. Because the way she speaks reminds me of her status, and the way she looks makes me worry that that's a front.
This kind of, we can imagine this moment where she's come up to the bridge or whatever. How does this however this airship works is, and looking out over the landscape and just orders you to looks like there's a storm over there. You should tack around it, like, even though you're the one that theoretically should know those things. But then as so for anyone else that's there, she's just given you an order. But what the others don't see is that when she meets your eye, there's an eye contact there that says something other than the order.
It's, it's definitely a Wesley and Buttercup on the farm moment.
Mm-hmm.
As you wish.
Yes.
Very nice.
Okay. Are we satisfied?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they don't all have to be 15-minute long.
No. Well, and in fact, I mean, we're going on and on, which is fun. That is what the game is, but it's also why those time estimates are very fluid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a name now.
Okay.
Okay.
His name is Kantogiri. All one word. It's an old name. One said it means advisor. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay.
What do you do for the Queen that anyone else can do, and why does she make you do it? Oh my. Well, I'm virile. No,
Apparently a lot of people do that for the Queen.
only for 6 months at a time.
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 6 weeks.
Some of them don't even get names.
Well, we've never established it. It sounds like there's not a king in this story, which is not necessarily a given, but the way we've built so far sounds like that's the case.
Yeah. No, Adriel calls them all Fred.
I think that the Queen, for reasons that are only known to her, although suspected by Kantogiri, demands that Kantogiri deliver some of the most important messages. Because, as she put it once, he will know the sense of it. She suspects this may, or he suspects rather, this may be just a worrying tendency to make sure he's not at court at certain times, but he always makes sure to interpret the messages fiercely, giving her the strongest possible vision in the eyes of her vassals.
So she kind of just uses you occasionally like a courier, but knowing that you read between the lines, so to speak.
Or a simple diplomat, where he's much more than that.
she knows that he will provide the proper emphasis.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that there is, whether it's sort of explicitly acknowledged or not, do you think that it's widely known what it means when the Queen has Cantagiri deliver a message as opposed to someone else? Or is that more like, when it happens to you, but you don't tell anybody else?
I see this almost as Cantagiri being hoisted on his own petard or success, where he wanted to make sure that he was the one trusted to deliver these messages, but now he finds himself sent on more messages than he intended. But he would be definitely making sure there's a reputation of when Cantagiri carries the message, you must obey.
Like when there's a big urgent stamp on a piece of mail. Because that always means that it's actually urgent. Anyway, sorry.
I would imagine there would be, yes, occasional ones where it's like, I'm here to deliver the ribbon for the best cow. The Queen demanded it. I will now buy all of your cows and have them slaughtered for the feast.
Thank you, my lord.
It is a great honor. Don't you agree?
Of course. Nice.
I am kind of setting myself up as the villain, but I just can't help it. I really can't.
No, setting yourself up. You're setting yourself up as Thufir Hawad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a lot of good inspirations from yeah, that's one of them. Both Lord Varys and Littlefinger, I would thank you very much.
You're almost more like Coburn at this point, though.
A little call him A, a little call him B,
Yeah.
but never call him E.
Right.
What column E? Column E doesn't exist. Don't look at column E.
That's a sword-only clause.
I don't listen to vile rumors about some mythical column E. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
You drawing? There you go.
Yep. I am drawing.
Ooh.
Who is this distant power you are traveling to, and why do they make you uneasy?
I have been wondering about this.
Yeah.
I've been wondering about this too. And what I think it is that this was a kingdom that was set up by revolutionaries that fled the kingdom a long time ago, like maybe 200-300 years ago, and so they are very against our country, our way of life. They took their ideals when they figured out they couldn't change the country. They went and started their own, and so they make I think they make all of us uneasy because the fact that the Queen is going in person, she will be putting herself at extremely great risk of people who are hereditarily against everything that she represents.
Well, so when you say they went and made their own country, like what was, if it was actual citizens of our kingdom that went somewhere else, what was that other place before they went there? Did they conquer something?
I think it was no man's land. It was like a no man's land, and perhaps it was the source of the airships, and that country fell to pieces and to ruin, and so these people expatriated themselves and went to build this new country in a kingdom that had previously fallen.
Oh, so if we're doing the Game of Thrones thing, so they went and settled in Old Valyria and built it?
So
yeah, so what you've got is like colonists rebuilding a land full of ruins and possibly, secrets man was not meant to know. And who knows what being in this land has done to them in the 300 years since they left.
Yeah.
Well,
and they're probably also still mad.
Well, and
that
so
they had
on
to
that,
leave their home too.
On that, then, so what is it that is the Queen traveling there because it is come to this? We need to seek aid from even our historic enemies who have dealt with powers unknown, and yet we have been reduced to asking them for help. Is that what's going on here?
I think that rumors have returned to the Queen that they may have stumbled across a lost technology that will allow us to rise above our enemies.
Okay. I mean, the other option would be that they are our enemies and we're trying to broker a truce or something, but...
No, I have this vision that she's going west and the enemies are facing to the east.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I like that idea too. And I mean, a lot of times people leave a country in order to set up a new life under new circumstances, but still retain historic ties to that old country. Right? I mean, colonists from European countries went all around the world, set up places that became independent, but they still have an affinity for the country that they left. So I don't think that's to come to them and say, we may not agree on this, that, and the other, but we're still one people, and we need your help.
Well, I mean, it sounded from Lee's initial description, though, that this was a conflict where they left after a conflict and were specifically enemies of the crown as they left.
Well, perhaps enemies of the crown, but maybe not enemies of the people.
So, like, maybe that they would theoretically have ties to the nation and its people and its culture, but specifically not the monarchy?
That's kind of what I had in mind.
Okay.
Yeah, or maybe even it's the reason that she's going is to prove that the monarchy has improved. That even though there was this revolution, even though the revolutionaries were ousted from the kingdom, that the monarchy took on those lessons and has improved it, and she's the proof of that. And so she's putting herself forward as, look, I'm not asking anybody to do what I'm not willing to do. And so it's more of a best foot forward kind of a proof is in the pudding rather than a last ditch plea for help. Well, no, it is a last ditch plea for help, but it's more of a let me put my best foot forward on this last ditch plea for help.
Are they refugees or exiles?
I think they would be exiles.
Okay.
The revolutionaries would be exiles, and then their families and friends and their supporters would have been the refugees that followed after them.
Well, but theoretically, this happened hundreds of years ago, though, right?
Yeah.
So they have rebuilt a society there since the original exiles.
Yeah.
Yes.
And,
Okay.
Queen of the Who? I thought we were an autonomous collective.
Yeah.
Monty Python reference, Nick Drake.
All right. We're ready for a new?
Yep.
All right. You saved the Queen's life once. How? God.
Bad posture.
I have so many to choose from.
It's almost too obvious a question for me, though. I want to hear Cantogary's answer to this question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Technically, I've saved the Queen's life thousands of times, but the one in particular which caught her eye would have been when she was young, before she had actually taken up the queenship itself. The terrible, devastating attack on the castle, in which so much of it was burned and so many people died. Fortunately, I was in the right place at the right time to instruct the Queen to use one of the back passages of the castle, a place seldom seen by the royalty, but well known to others with attachments to information. It was a terrible shame when both the King and Queen died that day, but I was there to help her along.
Wow. New chapter of the Queen's backstory unlocked. Parents both killed in an assassination within the castle itself. Nice. So I don't know how you guys feel about it, but like if I should draw another card or what, however you guys want to do it is fine with me. Please,
draw another card.
This
I
is,
think,
again, kind of needs a little bit of background music sometimes.
Yeah.
I thought I should have put some on in the Roll20. Oh no! Wait. You arranged for the Queen to be ambushed on this journey.
Oh,
What'd
wow.
they offer you? Oh, you know what? I think what this is I arranged for like a false ambush to convince her that it's too dangerous. Like, it's not supposed to actually put her in real danger, but only supposed to convince her that what we're doing is too dangerous.
Okay. And to trigger the promise to turn back.
Yeah, because I think that this mission is too dangerous, but I have not been able to persuade her, and I don't want it to be a case of me having to disobey her. Because I know that even if, I could stay true to my vow and try to, but what I want is to persuade her to turn around so that there's not a conflict there, because she could have me dismissed at some point. It's like if I'm physically carrying her off the battlefield, it's one thing, but she could certainly arrange to have me replaced afterwards.
So what did they offer you for this ambush?
So I think, like, what did they offer you? That's the intended framing there is a little bit different than what I'm doing, because it's like I arranged for it.
What if it was with the party we're going to, and they out of that they get a chance to show, yes, they are dangerous and fearful, and will have a better position in negotiating later. And they offered you the idea that no one will actually be harmed. No one important will actually be harmed.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's what they offered me is that it would be a show of force to scare her into turning around, but that there would be no actual bloodshed, just a show of force.
How devious.
Yeah. And that's what you get from like the power of sort of an oath like that, of like, I am so determined to protect her at any cost. And that means her person, not necessarily the kingdom. And so if I feel like she's being foolhardy and that this mission is hopeless and that she is just going to get herself killed, that I've made an arrangement with one of the enemy commanders, not like the full nation, but to say, we will be coming this way. You should have a show of force that will convince her to turn around.
Wow. That has no possibility to backfire, does it?
That has all the possibilities to backfire.
I mean, yeah, this is kind of the medieval version of Fiasco in many ways.
Yeah.
Maybe steampunk.
Yeah, and so this is definitely coming into that whole sort of scenario of, am I allowed to disobey her if I think it's for her safety?
Yeah.
And you explode in indecision.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were summoned to a private meeting with the Queen once. Why did you feel disappointed afterwards?
Checkers?
On a day not long after her coronation, I was visiting the capital city. Bringing mail and small cargoes, as I had been for some time before that. And I received an invitation from the Queen to a private audience. And, my services during that time were not cheap, so I had regular contact with the elites of pretty much everywhere I went. So this was not something that I found particularly unusual. So this was the first, before that, when I had done business in this realm, it had been with the former king and queen and other, people, probably Kentagiri, probably carried some messages for him from time to time. So it was not, this was not something unexpected. And I, went, but instead of a throne room, I find myself at one of the more isolated towers. And in fact, was standing at a window looking out over the city and the tower where my airship is tethered. And I came expecting packages, a message to deliver, maybe a passenger who needs to go someplace quickly. And instead, she sits me down for tea and asks me about the shapes of clouds and the wants to discuss the freedom of being able to fly where I will without having to without any obligations to any particular place or time. And I came out of that meeting with Yeah, well, disappointment is I was expecting a job, but at the same time, a feeling that there was a melancholy beneath her conversation for a life that she could never have.
Well, and you could be disappointed too, just because we established that you already have this profound conflict of desiring her in a romantic way, but also knowing that your primary asset that you have to offer her could go away if you were to ever give in to that.
Right. And
so just disappointed that you can't have both those things.
Yes. And that meeting was where that relationship.
What if, and I'm just tossing this out there as a possibility, what if in a moment of the sort of the status facade cracking just a little bit, what if she almost idly tossed out the idea that sometimes she wishes she could just fly away with you in your airship and never come back?
Yeah.
And it's like, even though you would love for that to happen, except that you actually also know that it couldn't, because if she were ever to run away with you, you would lose the connection to the airship and therefore not be able to do it with her.
Exactly.
There comes a time in a lot of men's lives where...
Yeah. The very thing, getting the thing that she wants would end the ability for me to give it to her.
Right, yeah. That's a tragedy.
So how did the ship fly with disappointment on your mind?
Very slowly.
Head down with the piano from Peanuts playing.
Sir, the ship seems to be leaning to one side.
Yeah. It was, luckily I did not have any place to go quickly that day.
So I took up the past one. Do I draw another card, or do we skip
go ahead.
the...
No, go ahead, do another card.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. These are fun. It's not like I don't want to.
Yeah.
See what danger I find myself in now. Or can I endanger someone else for a while? Oh, I did.
Oh!
The queen is under attack. Do you defend her?
So
with someone else's life? Absolutely.
This one we all answer, and then that's the end.
Unquestionably, I make sure that everyone else will die first before she would.
Well, so let's play out. How does this happen? We've established that there's this ambush. You want to paint picture?
Well, I'm certainly not aware that this is a fake ambush.
I certainly wouldn't have told anyone else.
It's certainly not one of the ones that I planned, anyway. So I would make sure that she is kept away from it. Is there anyone else? Just us? Like, is there actually a guard? Do we ever establish that? Okay. Yeah. Well.
But also we're in an airship, so what's the nature of this ambush?
Yes. Well, if we've established that the airships may have come from the country which has been rediscovering this technology, it would be the most unexpected thing for it to come from the clouds as she's admiring them.
Yeah.
And probably arrows followed, or actually harpoons really, followed by ropes hitting the deck and swashbuckling types flying down with ease, seeming almost to float to the sky, holding off on their cannons, at least for now. And then a fight ensues, and I proceed to take the queen somewhere safe, which also conveniently is safe for me. To arms, sword! You there, woman! Protect the queen!
Me? Oh, right, yeah.
No, the other one. The other name.
Okay.
Adriel.
All right.
And he would basically lock her in her quarters and stand in front of the door.
Adriel? The queen is under attack.
Oh.
Do you defend her?
Yes, I do. I will get out our arquebuses, make sure that hers is primed and loaded, make sure mine is primed and loaded, and we'll build a fortification behind the door so that even if Kentagiri is overpowered, that they'll have a hard time getting in, and then we can shoot anybody who comes in.
So now I'm just as we're painting this picture, Kentagiri, were you envisioning that I, as the Queen's Sword, am with the Queen in her chamber, or that she is being locked in and like I'm on deck because I'm the fighter, right?
Yeah.
You're being sent towards the bad people who are attacking us, away from where the Queen is going to be.
Okay. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Or...
Oh no, I'm done. We've barricaded the door. We've armed ourselves. We are undercover, and we are just waiting for someone to poke their heads in.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, does the Queen's Sword defend the Queen? Yes, complicated. Absolutely. In terms of priority number one is making sure that the Queen herself does not actually get hurt or injured in any way. And so my primary focus is on trying to strategically analyze the situation to make sure this ambush is how I arranged it and not actually some betrayal attempt to actually capture or kill her. So here's... I want you guys to decide whether or not is this them dealing honestly with me according to our arrangement, or have they betrayed me and they are actually trying to capture or kill her.
Roll for fate, guys.
I think that the arrangement that the Queen's Sword tried to make was hopelessly naive, and that they would, if this was actually with the enemy that was attacking us and not someone else, of course whoever you were dealing with would gather more forces than you were expecting.
But of course, at the same time, we could also just sort of pair it with the Queen's own mission, right? Is this enemy, this nation that we're hoping to go make an alliance with, are they trustworthy or not? Because if they betray me on this, they have been willing to deal with her?
Was this okay?
I assume that my arrangement was...
Okay, there's two groups we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. There is the enemy, the people we're actually at war
with. Right, okay, so, yes.
And then there's the distant land that we're going to.
Yeah.
Did the sword make the deal with the enemy or the distant land?
The distant land is what I was thinking.
Okay, yeah. I had it wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, I have...
So my thinking, though, is that this distant land is neither friend nor foe, but I believe them to be sufficiently dangerous that I think we need to turn around.
Right. Oh, yeah, I got it.
So
I got it.
It's this conflict, this cognitive dissonance of, I believe that they are not trustworthy enough to make truce with, and yet I am willing to make this arrangement with them.
Okay.
Versus her being willing to believe that they are trustworthy enough to make a truce with.
And we've also established that perhaps these people understand the technology of the airship better than Captain Andreas does. Mm-hmm. So the first thing that they need to do is, in order to make this ambush work, is to neutralize Captain Andreas. Yeah. That is their absolute
and I don't trust you, so maybe that's actually part of the arrangement. Like that's their price. Is
okay. So I am on the prow of the airship, navigating this, you see a glint of light from a cloud up above, and you know that is the signal. And you incapacitate me at that point.
Yeah. So I'm defending the Queen by making sure that the ship goes down easy instead of crashing.
Yes. Right. So now the ship can still move when I'm unconscious, but what you deliver is not like, you don't knock me out. You put me in a fucking coma. Okay? I am you're and the ship just kind of, because if the captain of the ship is incapacitated.
So we'll say that's my plan, but I don't want to totally cut off your ability to answer the question, do you defend her or not, by having you be unconscious before you answer the question.
But that was the plan.
Yeah.
But when there's a moment of hesitation before delivering the poison, and
the arrangement was done, and so I was
right. And so here I am defending myself against the wielder of a sword of tremendous magical power. Mm-hmm. I have no chance to defeat you. There's none of that. However, the ambush will not happen properly without the delivery of that drug. Mm. And
I think delivering you to them is the price for the Queen's safety, is my thinking.
Yeah, and that they want, because this is the last working airship, that they're going to take. You're going to take it and me apart in order to complete their technology.
Right. And I'm thinking like you guys would always have taken it from us and killed the Queen, right, and all of us. And my negotiation was, we'll give you the ship if you let us go.
Right. My anger at being betrayed in this way causes the envelope of the airship to blaze it burst into flames, and just radiant heat comes off of it in torrents, and the heat of that is enough to actually burn away the clouds that are concealing the exile fleet.
And the Queen's sword can't help but recognize the magical parallel to her own sword's blazing radiance.
Yeah. And so as they're sparring there, because the sword can't kill Captain Andreas,
or else it ruins the ship,
or else it ruins everything.
Yeah.
But without surprise, it's not easy to drug Andreas. Mm-hmm. So there's a stalemate going on there, and I want to know how Kantagiri, who can see this stalemate, reacts.
Outside the Queen's chamber, watching this happen.
Mm. Yeah. It's not a big airship.
True, yeah. Let's see.
I would probably be shouting something to the effect of, you know that my vow requires me to do everything for the Queen's safety, so my motives are pure. Submit to this, is what I'm probably shouting to you.
What an interesting situation to walk into. Never! I kind of like the idea of thinking of the airship, too, as a sort of animal that needs to be pacified. Mm. And the only one who can truly communicate with the animal is the captain.
Yeah.
Which is why it also mirrors his emotions. I also kind of like the idea the captain has a few tricks that no one really knows, such as the fact that he's literally bonded to the ship. He can't fall off of it.
Ooh, I like
So
that.
maybe part of his way of escaping the drug was to literally walk underneath the ship.
Yeah, like it was some aspect of your magical connection to
Yeah.
the ship that prevented my plan from working.
I just the awareness of it. You know,
Yeah, like
when you
I
pull
didn't
back-
realize you can sense everything that happens on the ship.
Right. So when you came up behind me and pulled, I knew you had it all along, but I thought it was just so that you could pacify the queen and get her out.
You wouldn't have expected it was to be used on you, but you saw me
Right.
coming even though you were looking the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I think Cantagiri, having seen this confrontation, and knowing that both of these people are dangerous to the queen, but you have to pick your battles carefully. And flying is, dangerous when it stops suddenly.
When it turns into falling, yes.
Would make a passionate argument as the flames blaze up around the ship and the wind whips his hair and his hat flies off in this moment of passion, to appeal to the one thing that he believes he knows about the sword, which is the absolute dedication that the sword's oath brings. Pointing to the invaders who are still after the flames have died down, moving now, no longer hidden by the clouds, now moving close enough to board an old-fashioned means by leaping from one flying, flaming airship to another. Point to them and try to appeal to her about the immediate danger that the queen is in.
Well, I don't think at this point the queen's sword could possibly be reasoned with. Her entire self-identity and reason for existence is tied up in the idea that this is the right thing to do. She is super sure. And until there's evidence that the invaders are literally trying to break their promise and hurt the queen, which they're trying to capture the ship, right? So I think that I don't know that there would be any way to persuade she's thinking, what's happening right now is we're being attacked, and the best way to ensure the queen's safety is to ensure that we don't crash and that we don't violate the arrangement.
He would probably be still searching for that logical argument, sensing there's an edge there to try to twist her oath against her. Okay. Well, but would circle around to be between her and the captain.
Okay, well, so if the ambushers are coming on, I'll say that the queen's sword would face them and let them know, like we have to take the captain alive, but I'm holding you all to your promise, and then you guys can decide whether or not they are actually legit or not, because I feel like the ship is a real good prize. It might be something that they would willing to make that deal. But
so at this point, Cantagiri is no longer standing in the way of the queen's room.
Right. Mm-hmm. Lee,
all right.
Any thoughts on this?
Certainly hearing that shouted argument between Cantagiri
and not just what your character is doing in the thing, but also like just how the ambushers are and
yeah,
and
I think if I can just add one thing that I meant to say earlier, I think that there would be a Cantagiri on their side who's saying this is too good an opportunity to just go by the letter of the contract that was made. We can get the ship, we can get the queen, we can rule their land by proxy.
To the extent that they make any indication that they're not holding true to their argument, then that flips the switch for the queen's sword.
Yeah,
it's hard for her to judge that at this point, though.
I think that the captain's mastery of the ship makes it difficult for them to board because they have to come past this aura of fire, and the whole reason that they said he has to be incapacitated first was because of his mastery of the ship make it difficult to take it. Otherwise, they would have taken it a long time ago. If all they had to do was ambush him when he was on someplace,
right?
Then
so if the ambushers really are planning to betray the queen's sword and take everything, they would still be wanting to try to capture the ship intact if they can, but without the captain being incapacitated.
Okay, so at that point, their attack turns from a boarding action to an assault.
Mm-hmm.
And
cannons come out.
And they realize the captain, when they see the envelope come to flames, they realize that the captain is not in fact incapacitated, and they start firing.
I just, for the mental picture of this, I just was suddenly realizing, like, what are they attacking from? Because if this was the last airship, like, they had something else?
We said that they had sort of a rudimentary control over those old technologies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nowhere near the level of the captain. I'm assuming it's much more primitive.
Ornithopters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Flying
have a
rat
much shorter range.
Right.
But, yeah, okay.
Right.
All right. So
with all the motion going on outside and shouting, I do want to hear what is happening inside the chambers.
Yes.
All right. So the Queen and Adriel can very clearly hear all of this, and I think that the Queen's emotional state might best be summed up as pissed. Because the Queen's sword, by her own mouth, has admitted to betraying her. To let this happen. Mm-hmm. It doesn't sound like it sounds like the captain's arguing against it, and Kentogiri is arguing against it, but there's not much that a small party like us can do against it. I mean, there's only the five of us. So I think what the Queen and I start doing is preparing to abandon ship.
So
the way I kind of imagine this is, and the way that Kantogiri would be on deck to see this, but also in front of the Queen's quarters, is that the Queen actually took over the captain's quarters, which opens up directly on deck.
Right, like the after deck of a sailing ship.
Right, and so there are windows in the back of the captain's cabin that can be opened, and then of course that's where most of the safety gear is, because of course it is. So so parachutes, or maybe a rudimentary jetpacks. Yeah, maybe mechanical wings of some sort that can be worn to get the important personages to safety.
All right. So just because we're running along and actually have some other stuff I'm going to need to do.
Yeah.
Let's each now, just with a brief, like 1-2 sentences. What is the fate of your character? I because I'm introducing this now, I'll kind of start that I think that the Queen's sword is cut down when she slowly starts to realize that these attackers are not they're attempting to board and capture, and then when she starts to fight back, but she's a little bit too late and she's cut down. Soul going into the sword, but to whom could it go?
Does it fall off the airship at that point?
No, I think Captain Andreas picks it up.
Oh.
And the connection to, he gives into his passion for the Queen. The earthly emotion takes over. The ship plunges toward the earth, carrying the boarders. Basically, he uses its power and the power of the ship as well.
And to be sure, recognizing the betrayal and that your love for the queen is pure, you would be granted the magical queen sword power.
Right. He picks up the sword and, standing on the deck of the ship as it plunges towards the earth, fires off blasts of radiance from the sword and obliterates the exile fleet. But then it plunges into the earth, and captain and ship are wrecked.
Okay.
So this could be happening slightly before that crash.
All right, so the title of this game is actually Fiasco for the Queen.
That's true.
It doesn't have to be, but it sure is this time.
I think that seeing that the sword wielder vanishes into the sword, there's a certain smile of satisfaction that crosses Katagiri's face until the captain picks up the sword, and seeing it merge with him, seeing that connection formed, he just sort of sighs, pulls out a hilariously small dagger that was hidden somewhere, nods at the captain, and charges at the invaders, yelling, "For the Queen!" Before he manages to get across the deck, however, the deck falls out from underneath him. And the fate of him is not known until some weeks later, when he wakes up in a cell in that foreign land.
And watching all of this from above, the Queen and Adriel have managed to successfully escape. And in the crash that follows, the Queen is heartbroken that her unrequited love has fallen, quite literally, and admits that this was probably doomed to failure from the beginning, and so we use the wings that we stole from the ship and start flying home.
Book 2, Queen Returns Home.
Yay! That was for the Queen.
Star Wipe.
Yeah. No, see what I mean though, in terms of like this, it's just questions, but they're good questions.
Yeah.
And just the context, is so interesting. And so, like, depending on the shuffle, you might end up with more negative type questions, more positive type questions. Who the Queen is gets determined not only by what cards come up, but their order. It's good stuff. Yeah. So,
yeah.
But thank you guys for playing, and thank you anyone out there watching us or listening to us. And
we had Otherdoc and Smartamaster in the chat room.
Great, welcome. I've got to actually shift gears because we're going to be recording Beyond the Wall Session 0 for, or not Session 0, but Episode 0 for Season 8. We're going to be doing that in just 25 minutes, so gotta shift gears. But thank you guys for playing, and play games, everybody.
Do it for the Queen.
Huzzah!
Huzzah!